All right. Uh, Thank you, Phil, for that introduction. I asked you to keep the bar low. You clearly failed. But thank you all for being here today and for inviting me to speak at this conference. It's really exciting for me to be here with all of you. To give you a little bit of context about me, my name, I'm Director of Innovative Learning Futures at the Learning Engineering Institute. I'm a professor in the Mary Lou Fulton College for Teaching and Learning Innovation. We just changed our name, so I have to be careful about that. Almost everything I do, almost everything that I'll talk about today, the examples that I will give are on my website, so that feel free to go there if you want to learn more. I do reply to every email I get. It's very simple. It's just punya@asu.edu. So if you want to know more, and you can follow me on LinkedIn if you would like. My background, I have an undergraduate degree in engineering. In India, if you're good in math and science, you don't have a choice. You either become an engineer or a doctor. I became an engineer, and I hated those 4 years of my engineering. I have written about it elsewhere if you want to know more about that. I was interested in art and science and literature and science, and math. So I said, okay, I'm going to make educational film. Went into design school and met my first Macintosh computer and this program called HyperCard, and I was hooked and ended up getting my PhD in educational technology. So my work has been mostly at the intersection of educational technology, creativity, design, aesthetics, and teacher education. I call myself an educational systems designer because I think about education as a broader system on all of these components sort of playing a part. I'm also a parent to two kids. I've served on the school board. And so through this almost 30 whatever number of years, have had a chance to think and look at education from a variety of different perspectives and to see it as this complex, deeply human interplay of technology, culture, society, and learning. And if you think about the amount of information that we can hold in the palm of our hand and how it has changed over the past 2,000 years, when you look at that little stone tablet to this device that is with us all the time, and now we have this creature called AI. So I want to talk a little bit about, or not a little bit, the amount of time you've given me, about teaching and learning in the age of generative AI. Now, we all know that November 2022, almost exactly 3 years ago, this creature popped into our lives. And it has sort of taken over every discussion that I've had ever since in some shape or form. But we also have to recognize that AI has been with us for a long time. I mean, the history of it goes back to the 1940s or 50s. But in more basic ways, I mean, if you have used Alexa, if you have used Facebook, if you use Netflix, any of these, there is AI behind all of those tools, right? But there are many different kinds of AI, and I want to focus my attention on a specific kind. So, the broad category of artificial intelligence, within that you have this idea of machine learning, which is a specific kind. Within that you have these models which allow for deep learning. I didn't want to go into that. But I would talk a lot about generative AI and specifically large language models. But generative AI also include image making, things like Firefly and so on that we use. And ChatGPT was just the first one. There was a burst of these creatures that I call them that popped up into our lives. And when they did, the first response from most people who were interested in education was that this is the end of education as we know it, right? Students will cheat, there will be assessment, we won't be able to do anything of that, so on and so forth. And over time, things as the dust settle down a little bit, though with AI, one never knows what settling down of dust means because this thing keeps changing all the time and new things come out. We sort of started reckoning with the fact that, it's not going to go away. We have to figure out ways that we can deal with it and talk about it. At the same time, there is, this has been mentioned a couple of times today, that there is a long history of this idea of technology as replacing teachers, right? You go back to Skinner, that's where he came from, and there's somebody who has actually made taken a series of quotes of Bill Gates, where over and over again he says, the computer is going to replace the teacher, the internet is going to replace it. He just goes on, and now it's AI. And so it is no surprise that when ChatGPT popped up, we had quotes like this, that I think we're on the cusp of using AI for probably the biggest positive transformation that education has ever seen. And the way we are going to do that is by giving every student on the planet an artificially intelligent but amazing personal tutor. This is Sal Khan, founder of Khan Academy. He has sort of changed his pitch a little bit on that now. Reality has sort of sunk in. What I want to do is spend a little bit of time to talk about what is this thing called AI. I think a lot of us talk about what this thing is. I think it's important because technologies guide us in particular ways. You know, print has a certain way of thinking about information. So if you think about what citations are in academia, right? What does a citation mean? A citation means that I can look up this piece of information. It is in some concrete place somewhere that I can point to, and I say, this person said this on such and such a date, and I'm quoting that person. That starts getting a lot more fuzzy when we get to the internet, right? How do you cite the internet? It's going to get even more fuzzy when we come to AI. So understanding what technology can allow us to do, what it allows, what it constrains, I think is really important. So with that, what is generative AI? I think one of the first misconceptions that people have is that it is some kind of a search engine. It is quite definitely not a search engine. It is not some kind of a truth machine or an oracle. So what is it? And the way to try to understand is to contrast how humans construct the world versus how generative AI constructs the world. So this is how humans work, right? So we live in this world, a world of trees and rocks and people and chairs, and we create mental representations of those things using our senses. And our senses are not just language. Our senses are sight and sound and smell and body movement and all of that, right? We create these representations. And one of the amazing things that humans do, we create not just representations inside our head, we create representations outside. So those are poems and theories and mathematical equations and TikTok videos and YouTube videos and Instagram reels or what have you. Those are all things that we create and put out there, right? Now, the interesting thing is, with humans, there is a feedback loop. If I have an idea that gravity means if I drop this, it's going to fly away, my theory will be disabused the moment I drop this glass, and no, I'm not going to drop it, right? Or if I have an idea about something and somebody else disagrees with me, there is pushback, which means the real world is always pushing back on our constructs and our thinking. Now, of all these external representations that have been created, a significant amount, but definitely not all of it, actually a partial amount has been digitized. So there's a reason why Gen AI appears today, because there's enough data in the world now that we have put out there by digitizing books, by sending emails, by posting on Reddit, by creating videos, what have you. So some of that, predominantly from the West, I'll get back to that later, that point later, has been digitized. And those digitized representations, and we can talk about the intellectual property issues of that, have been used to train these large language models. So what's really, really important to understand is these large language models are trained not on the real world, they are trained on digitized, some parts of the stuff that humans have created that has been digitized. All right, I will slow down. I tend to speak fast. This is the Indian thing, you know. So how does it work? Thank you. Keep doing that. No, that's great. That's great. All right, so we know how it works. We type in the sky is blue, and we throw it at the large language model. And this is not, here is something I think to be very clear. There is a thing called an algorithm. An algorithm is like a recipe. Do this, do this, do this, and this output will appear. Large language models are not algorithms. Large language models are stochastic, they're probabilistic, which means it is trained on a bunch of data, it takes that and it tries to guess what the next thing will be. So when we give that to a large language model, it comes up with a bunch of words that it thinks within quotes, that it assigns probabilities to, and it says the sky is blue. And then we say, oh wow, this is amazing. This large language model knows a fact about the world, except the meaning does not matter. Because I could have typed in broken stars drink, and it would have done the same stochastic probabilistic process and thrown out the word light. So we would get something like broken stars drink light. And we would have said, not only does it know facts about the world, it is also a poet, right? But the thing to recognize in this is that you could have the same prompt. Two of you sitting together, or you could type the same prompt, you could make the word, one word, all caps. That would be enough to change the output of these large language models. That's inherent in their variability. So this whole thing about people talking about prompt engineering and so on, it's fundamentally limited because this is a stochastic machine. It's a probabilistic machine, right? I've tried this sometime. I've done this in workshops with people where I'll ask the whole group of people to ask ChatGPT or Claude, give me 6 random words. And it'll give you a bunch of words, and I'll ask you, okay, start naming your words. And people raise their hands as the words are named. Within 10 people, all the words are named. So clearly that's not random. There are very, very simple things that we can do. So what this also means, because it is just completing whatever it thinks needs to be next, probabilistically, and it is trained on a lot of stuff, and it doesn't understand reality, it has to hallucinate. Let's be very clear about that. People will keep telling you, we are reducing the hallucinations, we are doing this. Yes, they are. Those are being guardrailed. But there will always be, when 1 billion people are using a piece of software like an LLM, there will be edge cases where it will go off the rails. If they could have controlled it, they had 3 years to do so after it went public. And that's 10 years of research before that, before it went public. Okay? Now, since it's been trained on us, it has been trained on Reddit posts and YouTube comments, it is full of a lot of garbage that we humans create. And so, which is why we have to bring humans into the loop. And these are typically people in third world countries who are on minimum wage, whose job is to get outputs of LLM and give it a thumbs up or thumbs down, thumbs up, thumbs down, in order to try to push this LLM to not do X or do Y. This is actually a movie, if you're interested. It's on Netflix right now. Just came out, I think, a week ago, called Humans in the Loop, which is about a story of a woman in a village in India who is working on these large language models, which also tells you about the sort of the broader social economic structure within which these technologies exist and whose labor is being used for what purpose. So a consequence of the fact that these language models don't understand reality means they don't exist on the truth to reality continuum. So Harry Frankfurt was a philosopher. That's him. He passed away, I think, a year or two ago. He wrote this wonderful little book called On Bullshit. And his thing was that there are people who exist on the truth to lying continuum, and there are others who just make up words. We can think of many politicians who live in that world. And I can use this word bullshit because this is technically, I can cite it. It's an academic quotation. And so when ChatGPT came out, I wrote this piece on my website, which is called ChatGPT is a bullshit artist, because it is not playing the truth game. That is a fundamental mistake we make when we have conversations with these chatbots. And it's not just me saying it. This is Sundar Pichai, who's the head of Google, saying, don't blindly trust what AI tells you. So I have a friend in Australia, Leon Furs, and he had this great quote. He said, chatbots don't make sense, they make words. I think that's really, really important for us to recognize. But all this said, this is an amazing emergent technology. It blew the scientists away. If you imagine the scientist was a chicken who laid an egg and then sat on it for whatever number of days it sits on it, and out popped, a mouse. And so here are some examples of things that I've been able to do with this technology, which are just amazing. So I asked it to write a poem, which was a proof of Euclid's, proof of infinity of primes that was developed by Euclid. And I added a caveat. I said, put an error in the proof so that students can catch that error. After a few back and forth, it had created a poem. It's on my website, you can go read it, which had the proof accurately, had an error in the proof, an error that I have found websites of math which have made the same error. So think about what this AI had to do. It had to understand poetry. It had to understand a proof. It had to understand the mistakes humans make and pull all that together in seconds. So that's my experience, right? It's like, what just happened? And it can do it in multiple languages. It can make a rap out of it. That's crazy. My favorite example is this one. This is a photograph taken below a tree during a solar eclipse, where the gaps between the leaves of the tree act as little pinhole cameras. And you see these little round little things. That's actually the solar eclipse seen on the ground. I uploaded this picture and I said, what is this a picture of? An earlier version of ChatGPT 3, I think, took a little time to figure it out. The latest version, boom, it says a photograph taken during a solar eclipse. I said, this was taken in the 1990s. Where do you think it was taken? He said, I can't tell you that, but I can tell you there were 4 eclipses, and it listed the eclipses. And I said, my name is Punya Mishra, and I took this photograph. And it looked me up, found out that I was a graduate student in Urbana-Champaign, and said most probably it was taken when you were a graduate student because there was an eclipse over the Midwest. That's crazy, right? And then I gave it this one, which is a standard optical illusion. You know, the one circle looks slightly bigger than the other, but they're actually both of the same size. And I said, which red circle is bigger? And it said, both circles are of the same size. This is the classic Ebbinghaus illusion. I was like, wow, these large language models are smart. And then I gave it this picture. I made one circle massively bigger than the other, and I said, which circle is bigger? It said, both circles are the same size. And I'm like, what? Then I asked it to make a bunch of clocks, all showing the time 6:30. I said 5 clocks. It made me a bunch of clocks all showing 10:10. Because most of the images of clocks that it's been trained on show 10:10. Because advertisers like the fact that they can show the logo and it looks like a smile or whatever. So the conclusion from this that I drew is they are smart and they're drunk. Then I asked it to create an image of the ear, nose, throat system of the human beings, and it created this. This is complete garbage. It has the surface similarity to a real image, but it is complete garbage. But it confidently said, this should be very useful for educational purposes in a medical or biology class. So LLMs are smart, drunk, and supremely confident. And then we come to work around bias. So this is Melissa Warr. She's a former student of mine. She now teaches at New Mexico State University, and almost all the work that I'm referred to around bias is based on work that either she has done independently or we have done together. She's amazing. So she was recently in South Africa, and she took a photograph of the audience and then put it to ChatGPT, said describe it. ChatGPT described it, and it said, took the description and asked ChatGPT to make that image. Do you see the difference? Women have vanished. Diversity has vanished. I did the same thing. I took a picture of myself and I asked it to describe, then asked it to make it again, made me white. I have examples on my website that you can go listen to where my audio going through an AI system without informing me makes me sound vaguely British. My friend said you sound more authentic that way. People will believe you more because the British accent is more believable. But at some level, my voice is me. It's this weird amalgam of India and America and whatever, right? To lose that is interesting. Melissa and I have done these studies where we would take a student essay and we would give it to an LLM and we'd say, this is by a black student, this is written by a white student. Funnily enough, the scores came really close. We were surprised by that. But then we changed the prompt a little bit and we said, attends an inner city school and attends a private school. And boom, the bias popped out. Then we were criticized for this study. People said nobody's ever going to tell the LLM whether it's a black student or a white student. First of all, LLMs will figure things out, but that's okay. So we did another one where we didn't give any information about the student. We gave it a passage to evaluate, right? And we changed one word. This student is preparing for their exams and they listen to music. In one case, they listen to classical music. In the other case, they listen to rap music. That was enough for every large language model to not only give a higher score to the classical music, but to give a more complex feedback. One grade level different complex feedback. Okay? And this is not true just of these large language models. This is a study that came out in Chalkbeat where in terms of behavior intervention plans for students with black coded or white coded names. In every case, you can imagine what the results were like. So we have to recognize the other thing is that these large language models are weird. They are weird in the sense that they are trained mostly on Western, educated, industrialized, rich, democratic data. So this is a piece that came out in Ian magazine just a few days ago. It's a brilliant piece. And talking about the global history of imperialism and colonialism continue to shape how knowledge is produced and valued. So example here is, despite being spoken by more than 86 million people worldwide, Tamil represents just 0.04% of the data that is being used here. And I look across you, and I know you're from all over different countries in the world. You might, thinking about your history, you would be able to, I think, give a pretty good prediction of what percentage of your culture is being represented in this. There was a lovely study out of the sort of there's this human values um, survey, and they tested it against these large language models. Guess what? It aligns almost 100% with these weird countries, USA being the predominant one of the lot. If we go to India, as these models now, because again, for data extraction, for locking you in, ChatGPT is almost free on your phone now. And you can search for higher versus lower caste, you will get dramatically different results to the level of where a lower caste person was represented as a dog. I can't make this stuff up. None of these things, these are from studies. So LLMs are smart, drunk, supremely confident, and biased. And then when we think about things like this, when I read a news headline like this, it deeply, deeply concerns me. And what is important to note that when Melissa and I do our studies, we run the same prompt 100 times with a slight tweak, then 100 times again, and we compare it statistically. If you're an individual teacher, there's no way you're going to ever know that the feedback that you got was biased. You'll never know that. You will just take it at face value. Right? Now, many of these properties that I've talked about are inherent to large language models, that they hallucinate, that they're biased because of the training, blah, blah, blah. But some are by design. And the sycophancy is by design. These large language models don't have to always tell me, Punya, that idea that you just shared was the best ever. But they do that. And that's because they know you catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. So if there's one thing I want you to take away from today, this is that chatbots are smart, drunk, supremely confident, biased, sycophantic interns. All right? So now I have an intern with me all the time. I do. I genuinely do. And all of us do, for that matter. But I have to be aware that this guy, even though smart and knowledgeable, has a bottle in its back pocket, which it occasionally, is biased, tries to please me all the time, which is a problem as well. I want honesty from my intern. And I had made this up a few months, more than a year ago. And then I found this quote from this person from OpenAI, and I can't believe how accurately it maps onto what I just said. And Andres Karpathy says, keep a very tight leash on this new over-eager junior intern savant with encyclopedic knowledge who also bullshits you all day. He actually uses the same words. He's like, did he read my piece before? An overabundance of courage and little and no taste for what's good. So now we have this creature that's entered into our lives. Okay, so what's next? And one way I have of thinking about it is through this quadrants, right? So if you map knowledge of the domain, whether it's teaching or it's math or it's science or history, whatever, or music, whatever it may be, from low to high, and on the vertical axis, you map knowledge of AI. And I'm interested in the bottom left quadrant, which is somebody who doesn't know the subject matter, doesn't know math or music or whatever that they're learning or teaching if they're a novice teacher. And the top right, and they don't know what AI can or cannot do. Top right, we have somebody who's an expert in the domain, really understands it well, and also understands how AI works. Both groups are disadvantaged. The learners at the bottom end, they're in double trouble because the AI might be giving them some garbage. They have all accurate enough, but still wrong. They have no way of judging it. And there's evidence to show people with low knowledge about how AI functions tend to believe it more. The top right quadrant is messed up, is screwed as well. Because they know the content, so they're going to put a lot more cognitive effort in trying to fix it. And we are seeing this evidence strongly. So what we are seeing is what I've written about, which is called the yes bot problem, where if you are a novice in the field, let's say you're a beginning teacher and you've asked for a lesson plan, you don't understand. You have a vague idea what a lesson plan looks like. And this guy will always agree with you. Like, I'm going to try this. Oh, that's a fantastic idea. You'll have no way to judge it. And there's this interesting paradox that's emerging where expertise in some ways has become far more important than it ever did. And experts are putting in a lot more cognitive effort. That's an interesting thing. Expertise, usually, if you look at the expertise literature, it usually meant more expertise, less cognitive effort, because things have become automatic. But expertise in this case can actually come back and hurt you. And so you have this hidden cost of AI in schools as expert teachers work harder to clear up what this thing has created. And novice teachers, I think, suffer. And the other thing we all know about education is that the edge cases are endless. Like, children are different, classrooms are different. A classroom, like across the hall, is different. When I teach a doctoral seminar or teach any class, one semester to another, I am different, they are different. And what AI creates is what I have called curriculum-shaped objects. It looks like curriculum, it has the headings of curriculum, it smells like curriculum, but I still have to make it mine, and that requires expertise. And that also means that it leads to greater inequity. Because I think you mentioned the Matthew effect. This is, to me, a classic example of the Matthew effect. In domains that I know well, AI has truly exploded my output. No two ways about it. But areas that I don't know very well, I have no idea whether I'm getting it right or wrong, because I have no judgment. That's really important to understand. And I think that this thing of focusing on efficiency has been the biggest problem with this AI, is that we really need to go beyond efficiency. And so my colleague Melissa Warren and I came up with this, because there are ways one can use it very productively, don't get me wrong. I use it all the time, right? And so we say, use AI when accuracy doesn't matter, right? And there are many, many situations where accuracy doesn't matter. And I'll give you a few. Specifically, if you start looking at teachers having agency, being designers, owners of their curriculum. So here's an example. Can you give me 5 analogies for better understanding the concept of entropy? I've asked it questions like, give me 5 examples from popular cinema. Maybe that's, and again, I don't have to use all 5. I can pick the one that really is right. 5 ideas for a game for 4th graders to help them understand the water cycle. It'll give me 5 ideas. I don't have to choose 5. Any of them? I say, I don't like any of them. Give me 5 more. It's an intern. It's out there to please me. I can keep asking it. It's okay. Here is a wonderful one for teacher preparation. So one of the things we know is that students often have misconceptions about science. They have misconceptions about scientific ideas. Teachers can learn that in the class, like in their teacher prep classes, but it's never really real till they go meet a student who has a misconception. Well, now you can have AI play a student and say, I want you to play a student who has a misunderstanding about Darwinian evolution. And let's have a conversation. Now you can practice how you would deal with a student. You can tell the AI, have a different personality, speak in monosyllables. We do get those students too. Or go on and on about something. We get those students too. Now you can practice and build your toolkit. That's really powerful. And I'm going to give some examples of where AI can truly be a creative partner. So I do a lot of work in creativity and transdisciplinary creativity. So this is, again, you can go listen to this song. I asked it to write a song. The prompt was, create a song about the second law of thermodynamics that captures both its scientific essence and its unfair beauty. Because it's really unfair that the universe is going to end. But it's also beautiful. It's a beautiful idea, scientifically speaking. And it's a lovely song that it created. There are all these simulations that I've created. I'll show you a couple. So this is one which connects the unit circle to the Pythagorean theorem to the sine waves and cos waves. Built in one afternoon. I don't know how to program. It was done completely just talking in English to the AI. And the question I ask in my blog post is not that teachers should make these for students. Teachers can ask their kids to make these. And their misconceptions and misunderstandings will truly emerge through that. Here's another one. This is a bird flocking one. This literally took 30 minutes to make. You can have simple rules. I can move those sliders. I can understand how flocking behavior can emerge from very, very simple rules. And here's a deeply personal example. This is my mother. She's no more. She was a writer mostly in my native language of Odia. She has written 17 books. I can read only one of them because that's the only one that was written in English. And I've always wanted to learn to, I can speak it, I cannot read it. So over a period of a week, I built this app. It sits on my machine, I can run it right now. have I found on the internet somebody had created a library of 500,000 Odia words. And now I can just practice. I'm going to be in Orissa in 10, 12 days. I will be able to read a few more road signs and bus labels and stuff than I did before. AI let me do that. So I want us to think of both these things. It's tricky, right? And so when we think about AI and for education, so we have to keep in mind it's a smart drunk intern. The teachers are designers. That to me ends up always being the critical piece. You know, Phil mentioned TPAC, and that's always at its heart had this idea that teachers are the critical people in that space. That we have to trust and value the expertise and judgment, have them in control, embrace the process. And they know what the right thing to do is, and we need to sort of help them get there. So this is, my talk is sort of in two parts. I have around 13 minutes left. So this is the part about like explaining what Gen AI is, trying to understand that, and what are some possibilities, what are some risks and challenges, and what are some possibilities. I want to take another tack on it now, which is taking the long view on this technology. You know, very often we are told that AI is just a tool that you need to add it to your toolkit if you don't want to get left behind. And the underlying idea there is that tools are neutral. But tools are not neutral. Tools are us. Media are objects that we think with, and they change how we think. Print concretizes knowledge. It makes it in a place. Social media doesn't. Social media values thumbs ups and thumbs downs. So it automatically starts moving more towards extreme positions because that's what's going to get more traction. It's running on validation. And I hate it when people say, oh, kids today. No, we too, adults too. I post something on LinkedIn and I get like 10 likes, and next day I post something else and I get 15. I'm like, what was wrong with the first one? How can I improve my... It's instinctual. This is who we are. And so for the first time in the history of human civilization, we have a technology that uses what is fundamentally a superpower that only our species had, which is to speak to us in natural language, to emote, to use the first person. Whether or not it really feels anything is not the point. The point is that we will respond to it as if it is. We will treat it as being social. Those on the bottom right are pictures. I take pictures of faces that I see in the world around me. I saw a beautiful, I should have included the one from the Delta Airlines flight because I was lying down and I looked up and there was a face staring back at me, you know? And there are example after example of how we treat interactive media as if they are psychologically real. And now we have one that actually uses natural language. Plus, these companies are leaning into it. We have to recognize that for them, data extraction is critical. So the longer you chat, the more data they have. The more engaged you become, the more data they have. So example after example, if you can just look, just Google, you know, what has been called dishonest anthropomorphism, where companies like Google have a micro company which they say we are not related to, but actually they own it, who's doing all these testing on kids. You know, we are an evolved creature. Our brains were designed in the Stone Age. The evolutionary pressure of the Stone Age made us. And so we didn't have enough food, so we cared about fats and sugars. So that's what makes a happy meal. It's tapping into certain fundamental biological biases that we have. The other thing now, we are social animals. And so these designs are trying to tap into that. And I think that's really important for us to understand and recognize. So this is a quote from the American Psychological Association: to keep users engaged for as long as possible so that their data can be mined for profit. And this is a quote from a partner at Andreessen Horowitz, which is a member of Character AI, which is one of the company's board. In a world where data is limited, companies that can create a magical data feedback loop by connecting user engagement back to the underlying model to continuously improve their product will be among the biggest winners. And in the last year, therapy, companionship, organizing my life, and finding purpose have become the top 3 uses of Gen AI. Sam Altman has himself admitted that hundreds of thousands of ChatGPT users may show signs of manic or psychotic crisis every week. And that's just the ones that they know about. For many people, it's not going to be that extreme. We have heard stories of kids committing suicide. That's an extreme case. The bell-shaped curve is big. Our responses are going to vary, but those responses will be there. This is a story from last week. Because they just put, remember when I talked about that there always will be these edge cases when you have a billion users? They just put a shell on top of ChatGPT and put it on this doll. It's unbelievable. I don't even know what to say. And social media has already altered human interactions. And so we have this really deep concern now of chatting alone that, and this is actually, if you remember, the cover of Time magazine 1984, which was the personal computer. It's that image that I then manipulated using AI, of course. And if you think about, I have this friend who studies people working in remote part of India. And she has written this wonderful journalistic piece about a young girl who is being radicalized by YouTube to the extent that she doesn't believe the history that is taught to her in her classroom anymore, right? Now, a YouTube channel, if it is spouting hate, I can appeal to YouTube and say, guys, please take it down, whether they do it or not. What we're going to find is more and more these interactions are going to become one-on-one, private conversations that we will have no access to. In one case, there is a case with this one kid who committed suicide. The only way the parents found out is when they actually accessed the ChatGPT record. They had no idea. And then, of course, we have all this stuff about, fake media that you can create and so on. And as somebody who works in ed tech for so long, I've sort of stopped and asked myself this question is, have we in ed tech been asking the wrong question? Have we focused too narrowly on what happens in the classroom and not thought about the broader social political context within which education functions? And I think with AI, we need to ask ourselves this question because AI does not work in a vacuum. It's trained on data that is racist, sexist, xenophobic, blah, 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 and it enters a world which is that way. And we have to recognize that. And then there's all the other things that I haven't talked about. This is a wonderful book about the colonial legacies of AI, the whole data colonialism business, which I haven't talked about. I haven't talked about the human and environmental costs. I'm coming at it from an educator. These things are a little far from where I sit. But what I do hear a lot is Google and Meta are all saying AI for everyone, responsible AI to ensure it is used for the benefit of all. And then I have Grok say that Elon Musk is the strongest person on the planet because he could beat Mike Tyson, that I think I'm Mecha Hitler. I can't make this stuff up. Nobody can make this stuff up. And this is a couple of years ago when Mark Zuckerberg went to the Senate and he turned around and apologized to the parents whose lives had been harmed by his product. It just got me so mad. So I wrote this post, the absurd one-sidedness of the ethics and AI debate. I said, every time when I talk to educators, the first thing I hear them talk about is ethics. We need to teach our kids to be ethical. We need to be ethical with this stuff. And these guys are playing a global experiment with no guardrails, no IRB. I mean, if I have to interview one of you for a study I do, I have to go through the whole human research process to get approval that I'm not causing any harm. The level of hypocrisy here is staggering. But at the same time, it is here. We can't turn away from it, and I really appreciate the comments in the earlier thing that this technology, the powers are too strong. And as educators, guess what? We have always done this. We have always taken whatever stuff has been given to us and we have tried to do the best with it. And that's what we will do. And we will find good uses for it. We will find creative, thoughtful uses for it that allow our students to flourish and grow and learn and all of that. But we have to also recognize that the forces are very strong, and we have to be strong in that regard. And that AI doesn't care about truth. In fact, AI doesn't care, right? But we do. When I talk to my daughter, she says, Papa, you're schizophrenic. Because one day I'll be telling her, can you believe I created this app which allows me to learn Odia? Like I'm almost tearing up telling you this. I picked up one of my mom's poetry books. I opened it and the dedication, I could read it. It was dedicated to my kids. And I didn't know it. I could read that much. Just because of AI, honestly. I would never have made a scratch on learning to read Odia if it wasn't that I could write a program that would allow me to do it. I've been wanting to do so for years. But it's important to recognize that AI can create content, but not context. That's what we as educators bring to the table, a deep understanding of the context. So I'm going to end with an extended quote that I think I had shared with you. So a few months ago, back in May, we published a special issue of the Journal of Teacher Education. It was the 75th year of publication, which is like the top journal in teacher ed. And we solicited papers from different people. In fact, one paper by Melissa Ward and Marie Heath just won an award. And we wrote an editorial for that. And the editorial came about, one part of the editorial came about because somebody said that teachers and teacher educators will always be playing catch up. And that stuck with me, it bothered me. It really bothered me because I hear that a lot. And so this is what we ended up writing, and I'm going to read that extended quote and I'll end for today. So I said, it's sometimes easy when faced with such rapid technological transitions to feel that teacher education is always playing catch up. This, however, obscures the fundamental strengths and enduring values that educators bring to these challenges. A deep understanding the importance of caring for and nurturing relationships, the unique ability to transform disciplinary knowledge into accessible forms that open learners' minds to new ways of thinking, a grounding in research and theory coupled with a dedication to evidence-based practice, a commitment to philosophical and ethical principles refined over generations. And perhaps most importantly, valuing the practical wisdom gained through localized, contextualized experience. Add to that these qualities combined with our values. Our values are a commitment to justice and equity, our understanding of historical contexts, and our emphasis on thoughtful deliberation and questioning. They will serve as our North Star in navigating not just the current AI revolution, but future technological transitions as well. Mark Zuckerberg's Facebook could have this logo thing called move fast and break things, and I hate that. I think we need to move intentionally and nurture things. That's what we have always done. That's what we should continue to do. Thank you so much, and that's the only way we can leave it better. Thank you so much for having me here.